In this video, what I'm going to do is a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is show you a small square with a certain kind of pressure and how a Model 20 pushes the fabric through a machine. Then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start stitching this 12-inch design on a Model 20 to test how difficult it is to do a 12-inch quilt block on a Model 20 on a regular basis. I have done a hanky quilt before and those are bigger than 12 inches, I think, but they are very thin and the fabric is thin. The sample I have there is denim. But first, I'm going to show you that for both of these, I'm taking the seam guide off of there. Now this particular Model 20 is one that came with the handle broken. And I reattached the handle by using a product called Loctite. And it's basically meant to hold screws and bolts in place. And the handle was intact, but just had come out of the hole. So I put Loctite all over the screw area of it, or the post area, and stuck it back in there. And so far it's working well. I've seen a few of them lately for sale that have their handles broken off. It doesn't mean that they're completely trashed. So this is my most expendable machine because it's the one that is broken. In addition, it seems to have a slightly lower presser foot where it's more difficult. It doesn't look so now, but when I was putting the denim through it a moment ago, it's a little bit harder to get it under the presser foot. And I just wanted to show you that if you have one like that, you can lift this up additionally from the bottom to get your fabric under there. You don't have to go by how high the lever goes. Now I'm going to be doing the pattern I've called 96 trees, and I want to do it on this. I'm just going to do the X part on this little square to show you how the fabric gets pushed in a Model 20. Now because this square is about 3 inches, I can use, and I'm sitting crooked, but I can use a line of sight and go from one corner to the other corner. And I'm using bright red thread. I do have the square pinned. It's got polyester batting in the middle. And I want to move the pin a little bit. So I'm just going to do the X part on this. So you start by pulling the thread forward and doing a couple of stitches, and then pull the thread to the back. And I'm just going from one corner to the other. So you can see right here, if you're working with a bigger piece of fabric, this is where you would start to get gathers and puckers. So that's quite a bit of pressure that the presser foot puts down on there, and you can't really adjust it in any way. So if you were doing this on a bigger square with 3 layers, you would have to make sure you keep an eye on what kind of puckering you're getting. Now the other thing I had done was to check my stitch length, and on the Model 20, with the lower lever that's in the front underneath the little table part, the further away the lever is from you is the longer stitch, and that's what I'm using because I could have done a smaller stitch on muslin, but I'm actually going to be doing that other square in denim. And that locks the seam by ending it that way. And it really, you know, this is so easy. And if you're going to make small blocks like this, and see how this one is a tight presser foot. If you're going to make small blocks like this, and if you do use different ways of quilting it, once you stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance edging on the square, you can then re-stitch into that same stitching when you go to join the blocks together. Now this particular Model 20 is not the smoothest of running, but one of the clues to a Model 20 is to use it often, keep it oiled, and prevent it from, like this one has a little bit of a bump that it hits. And again, here we go with the puckering. If I wanted to, I could have started at the center and moved out. But what I'm going to have to do is hold that flat. And I'm still going to end up with a little puckering. Not too bad. So there are 3 layers going through a Model 20 with a kind of a non-adjusted presser foot. Both seams locked, and I got a little bit of puckering right there, but not really too bad. Now the next step, if I were going to do the 96 trees one, I have to assume that this is my center point, and by using a spool of thread, I can go like that on the center point, and taking chalk, and I know this is probably out of your view a little bit, I can just go right around my spool of thread to get the circle to do the next element of that quilt stitching design. So let's go ahead and try that, because basically I'm going to be doing the same thing on the larger square. But what I want to show you on that is actually how to fit 12 inches into a Model 20. Now that piece of chalk is fairly wide, so I still have to, this is not going to be a perfect circle because the stitching is so much narrower than the actual circle. And in fact, this is where you have to be careful. So mine is coming out more like an egg right now because I went along the inner edge of the circle and kind of ended up with a point over there. But you can see if you're doing a bunch of these, and here's some more puckering. If you're doing a bunch of these, you just get into the swing of it. And that puckered quite a bit. So I'll end up ripping this out anyway and doing it over again. But you can see how the circle is the most difficult element of that. And once you get into the swing of doing it, mine looks more like a square. But just because I'm sitting crooked, I'm not paying attention. What ideally I would have gone in the middle of the green chalk. So I'll be ripping that out and doing it again. But the stitching on the back is fine. So now let's fit a 12-inch square in the machine. And I'm actually going to start with the circle. That's not the order that I usually do these in. But because the circle is the more difficult element, I'm just going to pick a point where two lines intersect. And this is just a single layer of denim, and you can see it's just, it folds up against the inside. When I do the X's, what I will be doing is rolling this up like this, and it'll be over here further. It's so easy to do. This is a 12-inch, just over a 12-inch size square. 16 inches is a little bit more difficult, but 12 inches should not be a problem. And again, with this one, I should be looking for the middle of the circle, which I'm not really doing. And this is why I haven't used this machine in a while, and this is why you should keep using your machine, and you should keep a new needle in it. Now, I know that Model 20s have no problem at all going through denim. So this is more about the machine itself, and maybe why the handle broke off originally if someone tried to force it. So with a 12-inch square, all you have to do is roll up the fabric to the side. And then when it starts to get caught like that, just stop for a minute, roll it up out of the way. It would be the same thing if this was 3 layers. Now, if you draw your design on the back of your fabric and you stitch on the back side, you end up with a very pretty chain stitch in colors being on the front, whatever colors you choose. And there I am at the beginning. And this one came out much better. So, working very small on a 3-inch square is not always an asset. But you can see that, you know, a lot of people think you have to do small blocks on a Model 20. This one is, like I said, 12 inches, and it's actually about 14 because I left fabric around the actual 12-inch measurement. And you can see on the back how this came out. And that's a very good circle, even though it looked like it was going along a little bit choppy. It came out well. So now I'll go and finish the other lines and then throw it in the wash. I'll probably put, this is going to be my edge at 12 inches. So I will cut a quarter inch. After I stitch that, I will cut the fabric, trim the fabric to a quarter inch beyond that, and use this as like a template for my design in my case. But if you saw the rope dolls and dollhouse thing, you can go over this design with stitching, and then it's more of a permanent thing. And if you're going to use it for quilting, there is a 12-inch block that you can make with a Model 20.